Hey everyone, this is Dan with Syntax, and today we're going to go over radio buttons and checkboxes. What are they and how we interact with them? So again guys, as I always say, first things first is please watch our previous videos because we do build upon the ones we did prior and then ones we're doing now. So if you watched our previous videos, these will be a little bit more easier to understand as we go through them. Alright, so again, radio buttons, what are they? Well, if we see here this little circle here, this is a radio button, right? So if we select it and we click it, radio buttons are clickable, right? You might have seen this before on other websites and applications used in the past. It just allows us to select an option, right? That is a radio button, this little circular option that allows a user input a click event, a click action. Now, checkbox. What is a checkbox? Well, I'll show you that. Checkboxes is very similar to a radio button. It acts very similarly. It is a box instead of a circular button, and once selected, it has a check going through it, right? Makes it easy, and that is a checkbox. It allows us to have a click event, a user input to select an option, okay? So that is a radio button, and that is right here a checkbox. Now, how do we interact with them? Well, we need to go ahead and use our locators as we talked about that in the first lesson. And before I move on, guys, I just want to show you that this website is from Syntax. It's from us. We've developed a website that allows you guys to practice all your Selenium code and your scenarios, things that you might come across from beginning in easy basic topics all the way through advanced topics here, that you can go ahead and use this to practice your Selenium code. Alright, we're going to leave a link in the description of this video so all of our students can utilize this and practice and do maybe some homework assignments and kind of get the hang of it, right? Practice makes perfect. Now, radio buttons. Let's say I want to select the mail button. As we talked about, we need a locator because everything we see here is a web element. Whether it's the word mail or this button here, maybe it's a syntax picture or link over here. It doesn't matter. Everything is a web element. I need a way to locate it. And how we do that is by right-clicking and hitting inspect. And as I mentioned before, depending upon what browser you're using, it might say elements, might say inspect as it is here in Chrome. It might say inspect elements, whatever it may be. I know inspect. I'm going to select this. If you have any doubt, you can also hit the F12 key, which is our developer tools option, our function 12 key. And if you happen to land maybe anywhere where it says network or performance or application, it doesn't look like the DOM is here. All you gotta do is select the elements option, and here comes the DOM. Now, let's find a locator for our radio buttons. Now, I'm gonna show you two different ways that we can go about it. Alright, so the first way here is we can see here that if I wanted to find by name, the name is op radio because I don't have ID, I don't have value. I can write a CSS selector or Xpath, but I see here ready that I have a name option. I can find by name. But the only problem with this, and you guys might come across this, is that the two radio buttons here have the exact same name. So if I captured this element here, it's going to go to that very first option. So let's say I want to work with this female button. Well, it's not going to work, right? If I just use the name opt radio as a way of finding this element, it's going to select the male option. Or you might be thinking, well, hey, if I want to work with male, that's great. It's only going to select that first option for me. So I don't have to do anything crazy. I can use that name radio, right? The name opt radio. But that is still not a good practice because let's say in the future there might be another radio button, maybe a gender neutral button here, right? Maybe not male or female. Well, maybe that gender neutral will be the very first button here, okay? Or maybe they say, hey, ladies first now, okay? So we're going to put the female first and then the male. Well, if I was wanting to use the male, that won't work, right? If female will be the first option. So how do we determine if these are the exact same? How do we get what one we want? Well, if we see here that we have value as male and we also have a value of female, right? And we have type, we have name, as we saw, we have class, we have ID and other elements, right? These are all attributes. Now, we have a method that's given to us by Selenium called getAttribute, where we can capture the value attribute, and we can see here that it would be male or female. So what we can do is capture all the elements that have the opt radio option, which is these two radio buttons here, and then we can sort through them by capturing the value of male or female and determining which one we want to work with, and then click the option that we want. So I'm going to show you how to do that. As I have here, I've written this code ahead of time just so I didn't have a very long and crazy video for you guys. I'm going to walk you through this code step by step, okay? So what we did here is we have a list of web elements, right? I need to capture both of these elements. So as we talked about, we have what's called driver.findElement, right? We did that in a previous video. But here we need the option findElements, right? Where we're going to find multiple web elements by the name. So you see here I have driver.findElements by name, and then we have opt radio. But what's this bit over here on the left hand side? Well, I have a radio here. I just stored it as a variable, basic Java, and I do know that findElements gives us a list of web elements. And how do I know that? Well, if I typed driver.findElements, we see here this option findElements, its return type is a list of web elements. So I know basic Java, right? Some collections, I need to write a list in this manner. I need to state that I'm working with a list and state which type of things that I'm working with, right? Whether it be integers or string or objects, does not matter. I need to put web element here because that's what I know I'm working with, right? So now that I've captured all of the web elements that has the name op radio, and it's put it in a list for me. Now what do I need to do from here? Well, as you see here, I have a loop, right? This is a for each loop, an advanced for loop, however you want to mention it. This is one way we can go about it, and quite simply the easiest. So what we've done here is we've put our radio button here, right? It's our list of our radio buttons. And then we have here what we're working with as a loop. Well, we're working with web elements, and we named it web element, right? Just to be simple, people know what we're working with, okay? Now this name does not matter. Again, basic Java stuff. I can change this name to whatever I want. This was auto-filled for me. I kept it simple. You know, work smarter, not harder, right? So now I have my for each loop, and you guys should know how this works if you're one of our students, right? So what do we have from here? Well, I have here, remember I mentioned the value called getAttribute, and we have this. So we have web element. Now, why didn't I put radio here? Radio.getAttribute. Well, what we did here in this loop is, as I mentioned, is we have our radio here. And everything that is within our radio, this whole list of web elements, we have now given it to our new loop, which we have named web element. So now we can state web element dot get attribute, and the value is the attribute that we wanted, okay? And if we see, I'm going to show you here, again, the return type. If I type in web element dot get attribute, I'm sorry, can't spell here. We see get attribute, it's going to return type of string for us. So I saved it as a string here. So now that I have the value that I can get and I'm saving as a string, I have a conditional statement here. I'm saying, hey, if my value is equal to, or equal ignore case in this case, female, because I want to click the female button, then I want you to click that web element. And again, our list of web elements is here, which we gave it to our new loop named web element. Our web element has a method attached to it that we've given it from Selenium to search for the attribute of value, and bring back the string, which it should bring back a string of male or female. Okay, now if you guys wanted to see how that is printing out, you can always have here a print line, and we can just state value here, just so we can see what's being printed out here. Okay, now what we'll see is web element value. We can always do a print line if we wanted to, but I know what's going to be printed, so I'm not worried about that. All right, then we have our conditional statement stating, hey, if my value, which is my attribute, if it equals female, then click that web element and then break the loop. Okay, so let's go ahead and save and run that. And there we go. It came to the page. It found both elements. It went through male. Nope, that's not female. Went to female. Yep, that's female. Now click. Now there's a couple other things I want to show you here with radio buttons. We have a couple of other little methods that we have here that's quite useful. I'm going to go over them real quick for you. Boolean Status is what I'm going to give it a name, and it's going to make more sense here in a second. Bear with me. Web element dot, and we see here we have a couple of methods. We have is displayed Boolean, is enabled Boolean, and is selected, which is also a Boolean. Now, is displayed, what does that do? Well, it goes ahead and searches through my DOM and makes sure that the element that I want to work with is being displayed in the DOM, which means that now this element is here, it exists. Great. Now, is enabled, what does that do? Well, it goes and checks to make sure that there is no disabled attribute here, which means that this is now clickable. Now, if we've seen sometimes, maybe if we hover over something that you can't click on with a cursor, maybe it has like a little circle with a red circle with a line going through it, or maybe it's like highlighted gray like this, and no matter how many times we click on it, it doesn't happen, right? That means that it's disabled. But enabled allows us to see if it's clickable or not. Okay? Now, is selected, pretty self-explanatory. It gives us a true or false, which is Boolean, and lets us know if the element that we're looking for, if it's selected or it's not selected. Now, why is that important? Well, maybe, let's just say this is an existing page and the mail was supposed to be clicked. But if I went and ran my code and clicked the mail without checking, maybe the action would unclick the mail checkbox here. The radio button here. So maybe by clicking it, it would get rid of and unselect the mail radio button, and that's not what I want, right? So that might behoove you, depending upon your situation, you might want to see if the web element is being displayed, is enabled, which means that we can click it, we can interact with it, or is already selected, right? By the method is selected. So you can always capture those as I have here, and have conditional statements here saying, hey, if it's female, then maybe having another if statement, a nested if, is if my element is, displayed or is enabled, or if it's not selected, then go ahead and click, right? So you guys can use your imagination there, but I didn't want to take up too much of your time. Just kind of wanted to go over that option. Now, checkboxes. How do we work with checkboxes? Well, we can do the exact same thing as we just did with radio buttons. It works the same way. But I'm going to show you another option that we can do. Just kind of a little more advanced to some people, but I just wanted you guys to see that there's many options. So when you guys get to work and you're out in the field, you'll realize that, the first way I showed you radio buttons, for some odd reason, may not be working for you. And you need to have multiple tools and multiple options to get the job done, right? So let's say I want to use option 4 as my radio button. There's a couple things we could do. We can write a Xpath or a CSS selector to go directly to the element that I want. If you remember me saying in my video for CSS selectors and Xpaths, it's not so much worried about the attributes of, IDs or class, name or value. It's more worried about its place here within the DOM, where it is located. And if you also remembered, I said Xpaths can go up the DOM and also can go down the DOM. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. CSS selectors can't go backwards, but they can go down the DOM. They can go forwards, okay? But before we use XPath in this example, as we can write an element, an XPath, to go directly to the option that I want. Well, if we see here, for option 4, we see that it has a value of option 4. But we can see here that there is no other value for option 4. So what I can do is write an XPath with my option 4 in mind. Let me kind of uncomment this out for you guys. See, I've written a couple XPaths here. I've written it as my input and its attribute value is option 4. As I just showed, there is no other value attribute with option 4 on this page. So that's great, that works out. I also can write 2 separate XPaths and combine them together and it would work the same. Okay, so I wrote 2 separate XPaths and put them together to combine to get to the one XPath. Now these 2 options here, guys, these are going to be a little bit more advanced, and for our students with syntax, we're going to go over advanced XPaths and other ways to write XPaths as I've done here, show you all the different methods that we can do, as well as shorthands with CSS selectors as well. So if you're watching and you're interested, please reach out to us syntax, and we'll let you know how you can be one of our students and learn how to do this as well. So we see here that I have another option. Not only can you combine the 2 XPaths, not only can we write by particular attribute, right? But we can also do something as an advanced XPath of saying preceding. Now this is saying my ID check 1 preceding input 3. Now I'm going to show you what that means. What I've done is I have written in an XPath with its ID, right, of check 1 for this button. So what it did first was find this half of it has found that button. Now the rest of this is now called an advanced XPath. I'm saying preceding input. Well, we know input is a tag. So I'm saying, hey, I want you to go to the very next behind me, right? The preceding input, and I want you to go to the input of 3 spaces behind me. Well, let's see. If I have my ID here, right, my checkbox, I want to go to the preceding input, which we know that these checkboxes have a tag of input, right? Then I want to go back to the index of 3, right, to the 3rd spot. So I have checkbox here, this little check all button, going back input 1, 2, and 3. And now it found option 2. That is also another way we can write an XPath. There's many different ways. So I just wanted to show you that now that I have, let me go ahead and comment this out, guys. So I showed you how we can go ahead and loop through, collect all of them and loop through our options, which we could do the exact same here with the checkbox, or we can simply go ahead and write a locator directly to the element in which we want to work with, and then click the option. And again, we can always use the is disabled, is enabled, and is selected options as well to check the status and the condition of the web element we want to work with. But you see here that I have my input value option 4, and let's go ahead and run that. And what it should do is it should find that web element and click it. Well, let's go ahead and see. There we go. We're on that page. We went ahead and found my option 4 element, and it went ahead and clicked it. Well, that's all I got for you guys. That's what web elements for radio buttons and checkboxes, what they are, and how we can interact with them. And as you guys can see, the great thing about Selenium and Java, There is multiple ways of getting a job done. I just wanted to give you guys a few options just to get you kind of broaden your horizon a little bit. So in case you guys are at the workplace or you're studying and you come across an issue where the one way you know how to solve the problem isn't working out, which sometimes happens, you guys now have more tools in your toolbox to get the job done. Alright guys, that's all from me from Dan. Stay tuned for our next videos, and happy coding guys.